Hi, and welcome back to Guff Stuff Weekly Podcast. I'm Javen,
I'm Guff.
and today we are going to talk about AAA titles and how they're dying
AAA. Okay, that's what we're talking about. Okay,
because of games like Helldivers 2.
true, true that.
So, picture this. You made a game, a twin stick shooter, several years ago, and the most people you've ever had play it at once was somewhere in the ballpark of like 8,000.
Right,
And it's very loved by its fan base. It was considered a very good game, positive reviews. Pretty much everybody that played it that liked that style of game really liked it. You did a lot of things right. Then you go to 343 and you say, hey, we have this idea for a game. And they're like, mm, not what we're looking for.
right,
Sorry. And so rather than have the Halo ODST Helldivers,
right,
what do they call it? It's like shock trooper assault game basically
right,
because you're just drop podding in. Anyways, I get off topic here. Rather than having a Halo themed one, they stick with their original in universe that they had of the Helldivers, and they make Helldivers 2. Helldivers 2 releases, and everybody goes absolutely psychotic because it is so darn fun
right.
and so well done that it doesn't take itself very seriously. It hits a lot of humor, hits a lot of game points that are fun.
Right.
And Destiny proved to us that PvE can be very difficult.
Yeah. No. Well, there's a lot of games that have tried the PvE thing over the years, and yeah, that does. It's just PvP is way easier than PvE.
In some instances,
I
yeah.
mean, in this kind of thing, when you're talking shooters, like
Right. So, but anyways, the game comes out, and so many people buy it and want to play it that they literally had to cap their servers at roughly 500,000 people
right,
because otherwise the game would crash and nobody could play
right.
because of the way that the game was designed. Well, they've finally gotten more
Yeah,
headroom for the servers, and I was pretty grumpy when I first picked it up and I just couldn't load in and play.
right,
But after giving them time to figure out, because they imagined 10 to 30,000 people were going to play this game.
right.
Because their previous game had a peak player of 8,000. All of a sudden, you have 500,000 people trying to play this game at once.
Yeah, it's pretty insane.
Insane.
Yep.
Um, so, and they've responded fairly rapidly, and I think in due course.
Yeah, I think so. I think when I was reading articles, I haven't played the game yet, and I don't know if I will anytime soon. But I know I was keeping up on. For whatever reason, I was just interested in reading articles because it pops up all the time
Yeah.
in news feeds. Helldivers, Helldivers, Helldivers 2. And the first article I read was Helldivers servers go from 100,000 to 200K, so they can handle the load. And then I think it was 30 minutes later they go from 200K to 400K because the servers are having troubles. Okay, next they're going to 700K because they just there was no way to keep up with the load that it was doing and keep it a nice smooth transition.
Yeah, so I actually haven't followed too much of like what the devs are doing or the game news side of
Right.
it. I was pretty vehemently opposed to just buying a new game and just jumping on the bandwagon.
Right.
But seeing as the price point was $39
Right.
US dollars on Steam, I was like, okay, it's 2/3 the price of a full-fledged AAA title.
Right.
And everything I'm hearing about it is it's a more complete game than the next Call of Duty to come out or the $70 game that comes out.
Absolutely.
It's better polished. It's the servers were the only true hiccup.
Right.
And so I bought it and I started playing it with some buddies of mine. I also wanted to play it and see if it was fun solo, which it is, although it is a team-based game.
Right.
Yeah, it's totally worth it. It's an amazing game. Like,
well, yeah, I mean that's what it seems. I know there's a lot of people in our Discord that play it. In fact, every night there's at least 3 or 4 people in one of our talk channels, voice channels, just talking, and then there's also others that are playing. You can see them playing.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's probably half our server at least has played the game at least by now. if not more than half.
And it's really surprising to me too, because a lot of the people that don't like to play games for very long have stuck with it for over 3 weeks. Which,
Right.
granted, that's not very long, but for some of our players, that's a long time.
Well, I can tell you for sure that part of the reason that is happening is it goes back to a game called World War II Online,
Okay.
and it is a push and shove game. And so some of the articles I've been reading, which are considered notes, which I said I don't normally read a lot of articles on any one game in particular. This one just keeps shoving more because
Right.
it's a big topic.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the push and shove of the game has gotten so much that the devs, they have one guy, I think his name is Joel.
Yeah, Joel. Yeah.
Joel, and his job is to make sure that the Humies don't win, essentially.
Yeah.
Like you guys don't win the game. His job is to make it so back and forth and make it seem fun, and and so his job is to kind of crank up the spawn rates and this and that on the go while the servers are going.
Yeah.
And from the article I read, he basically got a phone call. Hey, there's a problem. The game's going to be beat. You need to stop this. Because they were down to the last few planets or whatever it is. I think it's planets you guys are.
Yeah, yeah. You try to liberate planets or defend
Right.
planets. Yeah.
And if it's at this rate, it's 72 hours to get it done.
Yeah.
We're not going to have any planets left. So he jumps on. He goes to the one planet that they're seemingly attacking. And I think they said he cranks it up to 7%. And that slows it down, but sooner or later the people crawl up, and back and forth. It goes back and forth a little bit, but in the end, Joel's like, "All right, 20%. I'm just done with this."
Yeah.
And the bugs ended up winning the planet. Then
was it the bugs or the robots?
The robots, yeah, whatever it was, yeah.
I think that's where we were fighting. They call it Robot Vietnam.
Yeah.
It's Malevelon Creek.
Right.
And when you drop in, it's like this dense jungle. And of course, like you could sneak through
Right.
and do all sorts of like stealth tactics and things like that. But at the end of the day, if you mess up and one robot sees you and you don't kill them in time, all of a sudden you have just hordes of robots coming after
Right.
you. And that terrain there makes it so that you can like stumble onto robots
Oh, joy.
by accident if you're not paying really close attention to your radar and stuff. But you have to like stop moving to look at your wrist
Oh, of course,
to do
to
the
see
radar.
Okay. I have played nothing in the game.
There is no like heads up map. I mean, there's a
No.
little tiny one,
Right.
but to actually like use the map and zoom
You
out
gotta
and
put
see
it
what
up,
you're
you
doing,
gotta look at it and stuff.
you have to stop moving and look at it.
Nice.
Or I think you can keep moving, but you can't like shoot or
Right.
do anything like that. Your character's looking at it.
Right. That's pretty cool. Well, I think, yeah, to go to that
Sorry, I didn't
point.
mean to
No,
interrupt you,
that's what it is. It's good to fill in because I don't know. I didn't even know there's robots in the game. So.
Yeah.
Like I read a lot of it, but most of it was just the technical stuff of it.
Mhm.
Because it reminds you of the World War II Online, which is where I was comparing. Is World War II Online, the devs used to modify things and make it easier for the Germans or the Axis or the Allies to win, and it was a live map. And depending on how we performed, that's how things would work. And sooner or later, winning and losing and back and forth, right? Well, that's Joel's got his hands full.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of like a PvE like Foxhole.
Right.
Or kind of like PlanetSide, but like PvE.
Yep.
So it takes this concept that people really love of these mission-based team shooters.
Right.
Vermintide, Darktide, Left 4 Dead, Deep
Yeah.
Rock Galactic. It takes all of these ideas, and what it does is it gives you an end game goal that isn't just grinding deeper, longer runs.
Right.
It's okay, you need to go to this planet and fight on this planet, which has like meteors falling on it, or fire tornadoes, or like gross red desert sand and spores everywhere. So when you drop it, you can't even see where you're landing.
Right.
And when the winds pick up, you can't see 5 feet in front of you. Like
that's pretty cool.
It makes such a dynamic environment that not every mission feels the same.
Right.
And when you do something like that, it really makes the replayability, it makes the gameplay loop,
right.
which we've talked about many times.
Yeah, if you can just have a little replayability,
it makes the gameplay loop not so cyclical. It breaks it up a little bit. In that you can go fight bugs if you want, you can go fight bots if you want. They both are very different enemies.
Right.
And one of the other things I think that's a huge boon to the game itself is that there's so many options of what you can bring on every mission and how you can deal with every threat
Right.
that I have my comfort picks that I take a lot of times.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like I just like bringing random new guns and
Just
trying new
trying them
things
out and
out
see what happens.
because it's not like even on the hardest difficulties because it's not like a Destiny raid where it's a DPS race. Like there is no DPS race, which you get that a lot in like the raids in
Right.
like World of Warcraft or like fighting big
Oh
bosses.
yeah. Yeah, I know
And
that.
at the end of the day, even if you all die on the mission and you all lose all your Helldivers, you can still win. Because if you complete the main objective and then you all die, still considered a successful mission in the
Right.
over grand scheme of things.
Right.
If you extract, you just get more points and you get to get out with your samples.
Right.
So like there's just so many things that like I've done it where we've had people like we've had one life left,
Right.
and a guy will like dive off a mountain and throw an airstrike on the last building we need to destroy, and it gets blown up as he gets shot to pieces like Willem Dafoe and Platoon,
Right.
and then it's like mission success, and we're like, "Ah!" And then we're all dead, like,
But you guys still won, so
and that's the thing is like the community and the narrative behind the game is everyone's like wholeheartedly embraced it
yeah.
because it doesn't take itself too seriously and it'll make jokes but it doesn't like care if you think they're funny. It's not like trying to make you laugh.
Right.
Like the funny things that are in the game are just like it, just they're just hilarious. Like it's just naturally funny and they kind of lean into it a little bit but they don't have to shine a spotlight on it.
Right.
And so like the humor is great, the tone is great. Um and there's just I don't know, there's just so much to it
No, I'm
that's
not sure the company can afford to shine a spotlight on it though.
what's that?
Well, I mean, when you like right now they're having troubles even managing this much chaos. Like I think they're happy with this. Okay, nobody's getting too crazy because now they don't have to listen to the yappers, the complainers.
Oh, yeah, the people that
Right,
kept
they don't have to
whining and
listen to that
complaining.
right now because like they're so successful.
Yeah, the
So now
Redditors
they
have
can
all
just
calmed down.
yeah. There's not well, I mean, there's at this point nobody's buying it just to complain.
Right, yeah,
Like that happens in almost every game. Someone buys the game just so they complain about it,
yeah.
and nobody's doing that right now. That for good reason. It
Um,
just has good reviews.
and it flipped me. The game flipped me. Like when I first bought it, I was like, "This is awful" because I can't even play the game.
I know you were like,
I was so
I'm done.
angry.
I'm not playing this game. I'm gonna give it 2 hours. I'm gonna
I was so upset.
return it to Steam. And I'm done.
I was fully ready to refund it after 2 hours, and then 2.5 hours went by,
Yep.
and
You're like,
I realized, and I'm like, "Oh, now I can't refund it." Which I mean, in the end, it was good because it's a game I really like,
yep.
and I'm probably gonna dump a ton of hours in it.
Yep.
It just blends a lot of really, it blends a genre that I've always, in theory, should have liked,
Right.
which is like the Left 4 Dead kind of like
Right.
team shooter,
Right.
PvE shooters. But I just haven't really found a whole lot of those that I like. I've tried a ton of them, just haven't found any I like. But it also blends in elements of like mission based tactics and not mission based tactics of like linear because you don't need to just you don't run the same map and do the same
right.
sequence of grab the eggs, put them in a pod over and over again.
Right.
You know, that's the trouble with like Destiny and Left 4 Dead's and even to some extent like Vermintides and stuff like that is that there is a pre-designed mission
Right.
that you just keep running over and over again.
Right.
Diablo kind of has a similar thing too, where
right.
you know
Yeah.
towards
I mean, the map may change, but
right, you're just kind of doing
same
the same thing.
concept though. Gotta go beat this boss so I can get to the next boss.
And I like the concept of it not being bosses that you have to fight. I like the concept of it being you need to go down, you need to complete these objectives.
Right.
These are your side objectives, and then these are tertiary objectives. You can do any number of the lower ones, but the main objective you need to do and you need to finish
Right.
it. Otherwise, rather than benefiting the planet, that means that
Right.
the percentage of capturing the planet swings the other way if you fail the mission.
So as you're playing the game, taking new planets, are you unlocking new technologies?
Yeah,
Or is
so
that each individual gets their own technology tree to unlock?
each um as of right now, there's a thing called war bonds, which it's not a premium currency. Thank God. There is a premium currency, like a real money currency, but like
Is it for skins and whatnot?
it's for like some different armor sets, but it's not like anything game breaking. It feels cosmetic,
Right.
but at the end of the day, I've never bought any of it, and I think I've purchased all the things
Okay.
because you could just get it in game.
Oh, right.
Like you could just collect it in game.
Right. It's not something you can either speed it up by
Oh,
taking cash, or you can just
yeah.
get it in game.
And then so war medals. That's how you unlock new like guns,
Right. Yep.
armor,
That's what I was wondering
grenades.
about. That gotta
And
have
then
some escalation.
they have a base track of gear that you can select from, and it's in long progression. Like I've played 40 or 50 hours now, and
Right.
I think I'm probably 60% of the way through it.
Hmm.
So, I mean, as far as content goes, if you consider that content, it's
Right. Well, that would be content, I would think.
I'm pretty sure they snuck in a bunch of new things in the most recent update that they didn't even tell us about, like new mission types. Because there's been like new mission types that we encountered last night that we
Oh,
hadn't seen before.
tired today, man.
Yeah.
Holy jeez. Pardon me for yawning so much. Sorry, I wasn't trying to get you off track there.
No, it's all good. Yeah, it's really cool.
Well, one I'm gonna have them. I'll buy it someday, I'm sure, but I gotta get past the first couple or these two games I'm playing now, and then we'll move on to something new. By then, everybody will be bored of it. Won't matter anyway. Anyway, so
But oh yeah, so this kind of morphs into something that we talked about right at the beginning, which was AAA is kind of like falling off the face of the earth.
yeah,
And I mean, we've had two games if we include Helldivers,
right.
which I included because I think the longevity of this game and the way the developers interact with the community and just how
Oh,
much fun people are having with it
yeah, yeah.
for the price point.
Well, that it wouldn't make the news near as much either.
Yeah.
Like it's just constantly making the news.
Well, it's just, it's
Which I like. I say I pay attention to the news articles, but this one just keeps popping up
oh,
over and over.
and one of my favorite things about Helldivers, it's just the culture and memes and references you get now
Yeah.
from it. Like it's oh my gosh, it's so good. Like it's just so good, and it's never gonna stop because it's there's just so much to it. Um, but yeah, so we had Baldur's Gate 3 made by Larian Studios, which
Yeah.
we've talked about
Which is a
extensively.
decent company. It's just not huge. It's
Right.
not EA. It's not
Well,
Activision.
well,
It's not
and the
Blizzard.
company that made
Bethesda.
the company that made Helldivers isn't a massive company
Yeah.
either.
Well, same thing goes for the other big game that just came out not that long ago, Pal World. So yeah, that company. I can't even think of the name of the company right off my head. I'm gonna look it up because now it's gonna bother me.
But yeah, so like what we're seeing though is I don't know if I lump Pal World in because it wasn't really a full release. You know what I mean?
Well, we did a whole video on it, Pocket Pair.
Yeah. I mean, Pal World reminds me of like Flappy Bird.
Right, but it's almost a fully released game. I mean,
Right.
it like I put in probably close to 100 hours in now, and it's not a mainstream company by any means.
Hmm.
Like they have the same issues Helldivers having.
Yeah.
They had so much growth they didn't know what to do. They almost bankrupt the company if Microsoft wouldn't have stepped in to say, "Hey, we're offering you free server,
Yeah.
and we want a little cut of the action." It would have been done
Yeah.
because they couldn't have afforded the costs of keeping it going.
But I guess the point I want to drive home is like the games that are coming out at $40 and the polish. It's like Helldivers and Baldur's Gate are the ones that really jump out to me because
Yeah, well, you
they were
played both of those,
yeah, and they were
so
polished. They were like they
right,
just felt complete when they came out.
right,
And the amount of stuff they've been releasing for free for
right,
them has been like phenomenal.
right.
And so I think that AAA companies are gonna I mean, there's gonna be a comeuppance of sorts. I mean, we've talked about this before, and I don't want to beat a dead horse,
Right.
but at the end of the day, when you're milking the cow for every last drop of milk and making them pay for it every step of the way,
Yeah.
they're gonna get tired of it eventually.
Yeah, I mean, the only companies I can think of right now that have released games in the last few years that were polished, that were AAA titles, that didn't do that to you. I mean, Bethesda released Starfield, and that is a fantastic game, and it's very well done. There was very few hiccups, and I mean, I'm sure I'm gonna get hate for that, but
But was Starfield as good as Baldur's Gate 3?
I mean, it's just different. It's that
I
different.
get
Yeah.
that, but like I'm trying to think of it as like a whole product quality.
Um.
So a good way I'm trying to frame this is like, was Starfield as received, as critically acclaimed, and not just from the critics, but from everybody?
Right.
Like, was there a unanimous decision on Starfield that this is awesome? This is game of the year material. The price is right.
Right.
The value is right. Everything we love about this game. Is it at the level of the other
Well,
games
not
being
many, not
released by
many, not
non-AAA's?
many companies can compare it to Baldur's Gate. To be fair,
I mean, but
but
Bethesda should be one that should.
right, I think overall, I think they were received as well as they could be for a Bethesda title.
Okay.
I mean, you know they're gonna have their goofy bugs, which of course every Bethesda title ever released has had them.
Right.
It's a very polished game. I've never had any problems with it. I didn't have to worry about logging in every day and having a 15 gig patch every day like you do with some of the other AAA titles that release the games that are complete.
Right.
Day one releases, you're like, oh, I'll wait for next week to start playing because I got to download. I can't even remember what game that was here not that long ago. I, I'm just like, I bought the game and like, okay, now I have to install like a 20 gig patch and then another 50 gig patch and another 30 gig patch. It's like, what in tarnation?
But I guess the point I'm trying to drive home is like, we've seen indie companies
Yeah.
release games that have been massively
Oh
successful.
yeah, absolutely.
Inscription by Devolver Digital is one that comes to mind.
Right.
That game was universally loved.
Right.
Factorio has universally
Yep.
loved. Crypt of the Necrodancer, Kingdom. Like, there's been so many games as far as indie companies
Right.
go that have been super well received,
Right.
but not usually by mainstream.
Right.
Usually it's like a group of people that are like really passionate about it, and they're friends and like, but the amount of people that are playing Baldur's Gate, that are playing Helldivers, that are playing Pal World,
Yeah.
is not
Has to.
inconsequential.
No, definitely not in
Like it's
consequential.
enough that EA and some of the other companies, Sony and all them, are going to be looking and be like, how do we get a slice of that?
Yeah, no, yeah, that's
It,
exactly right.
but there also comes this issue of, I can't remember what the name of the game was, but EA supposedly released a game that had no microtransactions. It was just a single player story driven RPG. I can't remember what it was called, and it did poorly.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay,
Oh,
well,
yeah.
people don't want
I
this.
know what you're talking about.
They took it as people didn't want this, and
Yeah.
it's like, it's not that people don't want it. It's just that you made a shite game.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right.
It's not fun.
Well, I think there's nothing like with the indie companies. There's nothing to lose with going outside the boundaries, outside the norm.
Mhm.
Because how many World of Warcrafts you need? How many Destinies you need?
I just don't see
How
what.
many repeats of games that you've seen out there? Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of games are made that are just copies of another game, just changed a little bit. These games like Helldivers and Pal World and Enshrouded, maybe even a little bit, but that's kind of along with Valheim. Although they both did fairly well on their release, maybe not as far as Baldur's Gate, but there's no harm and there's nothing wrong. These companies can go as wild as they want because if they fail, okay, so we lost a couple years. Okay.
And
they just start over on a new project.
And I guess the thing about the two that we've talked about, specifically Helldivers and Baldur's Gate 3,
Right.
is they're games that feel like AAA games.
Yeah, no,
like
exactly.
they are AAA games.
Yes, no, they are.
But not by AAA companies and
Right.
not for the price of AAA
Right.
games.
No, exactly.
And so at the end of the day, what's the point of having a AAA studio
no.
that pumps out garbage?
Well, that just puts all the AAA studios on alert. Hey,
on high alert, yeah.
you guys need to. Well, this kind of brings me back to when I first started playing video games. there was no AAA companies back then.
Right.
Blizzard wasn't a AAA company. It was one of the companies that made games.
It was one of the few
But
companies that
Westwood
made games.
Studio or Westwood Studios, Sierra Studios. I mean, there's all these companies. They were all little tiny studios with 20, maybe 30 people tops. There was no behemoth like there is now with that EA and even Microsoft. They're huge companies of thousands of employees doing one thing. Yet somehow they still screw stuff up.
Well, and
Where Pal World,
and I don't work in
Helldivers,
Yeah, it's smaller companies.
Baldur's Gate. These guys are 20-man companies, just like they were back in the day.
Yeah, it's a hand. I mean, honestly, it's like the whole idea of your grandmother making cookies versus buying cookies from a tube.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, I know Larry and
at the end of the day, you're getting cookies, but you like one of them a lot more than you like the other.
Yeah, I mean, Larry and Studios and even who I don't even know the name of the company that made Helldivers. Oh, I just looked it up too. But anyway, these companies know they're not going to be billion-dollar companies next year, but they know that they made a AAA. They made AAA titles. Arrowhead Studios. They made AAA titles for the cost of a indie style game, right? And the next game they make, the crowd's coming. And so hopefully they don't fall into the same trap some of these other companies do and rush a game just because.
And at the end of the day, it's not graphics that sells a game.
No.
It's not story that sells a game.
No.
None of that crap matters because people like you got people like me who will play Caves of Cud. That's a glorified Excel spreadsheet.
Or I like to think of there's a few of our members that play Stardew Valley.
Yeah.
And I'm even getting ready to get back into it. One guy by himself made this game. And that's all he does. He just makes Stardew Valley.
Yep.
And now he's going to release an 8-player map.
Yep.
And people are just, oh, it's popping up on my newsfeed all the time. I'm like, what the freak?
Yeah.
Like, wow. And that's one guy. So hear it out, big studios. You need to pay attention because if you don't,
at the end of the and whatever you're making, what sells a game at the end of the day is it priced reasonably, and that doesn't even matter half the time.
No, price is not price. The only reason price is if you're a new company that nobody knows. If you try to charge $70 for a game, nobody's even gonna look at you.
I guarantee you, Arrowhead could have charged $60 for this.
Oh, because the 8,000 people that were gonna buy it would have raved about it.
Yeah, and then everyone
would have paid the $60 price.
But at the end of the day, is your game fun? Yeah. That's the question. You need to ask yourself: is your game fun? Would you sit down and play your game? Because if you're trying to make a game that you would like to play, at the end of the day, the amount of effort and quality control and all that's going to go into it is going to be better. And granted, I'm not a game designer. I don't know how all this works.
No.
But I'm just a guy who's a consumer, and I can tell you, games that are fun, I play a lot more than games that aren't.
Yeah. No, that's I think that's exactly right. I can't agree any more than that.
So.
Alrighty. Well, I think that ties up this episode.
Heck yeah.
Until next time. My name's Scott.
I'm Javen.
Later.